Ren started as a band in 1999, released the first EP in 2003 and a full length in 2005. Therefore, you precede what has been popularly called the new wave of traditional heavy metal. I know many people don't like this label because there's actually nothing new to it, it's just pure heavy metal. But let's call it that. How do you see this renewed interest in the kind of sound you have been doing for the last 20 years?
Well, when we started, there was nobody playing the traditional stuff. In Sweden, it was just us and Wolf, and maybe in the States there was Twisted Tower Dire. There was just a handful of bands. Everybody else was doing melodic death metal or power metal or
new metal.
New metal, yeah, new metal was big, or that Limp Bizkit kind of shit. And we were desperate for the old sound.
Anything that was closer to heavy metal was very happy power metal, and we didn't like that at all.
No, it's very
too happy sounding.
Yeah, too much major going on. And so we met up on the way to a metal show on the bus, dressed in leather, long hair, and we started talking because nobody looked like that back then, really, in 1999. And so Harry told me he had some demo tapes. He came over, and we listened to the demo tape, and I said, I have to sing on this. There's no, I have to sing on this. And then we played for what, 2-3 years before this whole label of traditional heavy metal even appeared. It didn't exist when we started, and people were calling us that, and we were just happy to have a label, because before that nobody knew what we were doing. We would play opening shows for Dark Tranquility or something, and there would be kids with black fingerless gloves and makeup going, they didn't understand what we were about at all. So for us, I think it was just good that there actually appeared a label that could describe our sound. So because we weren't in limbo anymore, it was like, yeah, we're doing that. Yeah, exactly.
And how do you see the renewed interest of mostly fans and new bands popping up everywhere?
Well, it has its ups and downs, I would say, or good things, bad things.
I think you could say that the labels, the record labels, they're trying to kickstart something called this new wave of traditional heavy metal back in 2009, on a bigger scale, and of course we're good with many new bands because there are greater number of opportunities to play live because there's a scene going on. So that was a good thing.
Yeah, but some of the bands were very good and some of the bands were very bad, but that's the problem with every scene. I mean, that's how it's going to be. So.
And you always have the bandwagon going on.
Yeah, and what we always tried to do was not to write the most traditional songs. We always tried to color them in a way, and when we hear bands that sound like, that use the exact harmonics as Iron Maiden or that very traditional harmonics, then we go, come on, you don't have to do that again. Everybody did it back in the 80s. So I mean, just try to take the sound, but twist it your way, and things are going to be fine. And then another thing that I don't like with the new wave of traditional heavy metal was bands using the scene as an image, going like, yeah, we play the old sound and that's our image, period. And if you go back to the 80s, every band had an image. They couldn't live off, they were playing something new, so they couldn't live off of a scene like that. They had to have some kind of image. They had to
invent stuff,
and be creative in one way or another. And now people just go, oh yeah, but we're just like the old stuff. And that's not an image. It's just do something personal and something that's your own, instead of just, I mean, scenes die, and when they do, the bands that don't pop out, they're the ones that are gonna go down with it the hardest.
Black Path Metal Recordings, a label you co-owned, released the first album, Force Entry. Next one, Lightbringer, came out through AFM Records, and since Death you are signed to Metal Blade. In your opinion, what are the reasons for the success you have achieved?
Well, we just kept on playing.
Playing what we like and what we believe in.
Yeah, and we always had very energetic live shows. We try to give it everything we have every single night, and I think that's been recognized, and a lot of different factors, but we sold a lot of copies of the first EP ourselves.
Without any distribution.
No. So we made a name for ourselves that way early, and record labels tend to notice that. There were a lot of labels. We were in contact with Nuclear Blast at the time, and a lot of labels, but we ended up with Metal Blade, and to me, since even if we try to do our own thing within the context that we're working with, we're still like, you know, nerds, metal nerds. I mean, when we signed to Metal Blade, I was like, we're gonna have the old Axe logo, you know, the first one, and then we just rolled with that. I mean, for the Raw album, then we took back the silver labels on the vinyls that were on the very first Metal Blade releases. So there's exact replicas of the first silver labels, but Metal Blade couldn't do them anymore back in the early 80s because they couldn't afford the silver. So they went to the white label, and we did the white label on the Subversive album, and then we went to the silver label on the Raw album. So it's just like, we really like our metal history and enjoy being on the label with such a rich heritage.
Your most recent release was Rod in 2017. It also contains the first conceptual story written by the band in its B-side if you're looking at the vinyl edition. Why did you decide to write half a conceptual album? And this is not a criticism, because one of my favorite albums of all time, Fatal Portrait by King Diamond, is also a half conceptual album.
I think we weren't ready for a full concept album, so we tried our way with this first one. Well, that's part of the answer, I think.
Yeah, we started writing for a concept album, and we had a story, and we realized that, well, the story is not long enough for all the songs. That's just gonna be, we didn't want to add in all these unnecessary parts in the lyrics just to fill out a whole album, and I was also looking at albums like 2112 with Rush, that's also just half concept album. I prefer that because, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a really big King Diamond fan, but you're gonna have songs where they're kind of in the middle of the plot, you know, like where you have to have that song, it has to have that lyric, but nothing's really going on in the story in that song. And to me that's kind of a waste of a song, if you know what I mean. So I prefer a shorter story, and so you don't have
songs that possibly can stand on their own also.
Yeah, we were also talking about that we had to be able to, in the future, do the whole song Ramrod the Destroyer live, and then we didn't want the whole album because that would be more or less a whole show, so we could lift it out and do it in its entirety live, and it would work within a live context. We've never done that, but it's something we might do in the future, and we wanted to be able to have that option.
I like how the story ties sci-fi story with philosophical questions of independence, standing against the status quo. How do you approach writing the lyrics?
The lyrics are basically Gnostic. If you go back to ancient Greece Gnostics, with this overseeing entity that controls everything, and the cyborgs living in the world which the Ramrod comes to have become complacent. All they care about is immortality, so they just want, that's all they care about. So the overseer plans their whole lives for them, so they don't have to bother about anything. They just live in this ever-going system so they can feed the overseer's need for control. But the Ramrod arrives saying that there is no use of living forever if you're not living your own life. And he's disgusted with the whole thing, and he destroys it. And so it's based on Gnostic ideas of the Demiurge and the Archons and stuff like that. And I just wanted to take it into a sci-fi context. So you take these ancient stuff and you make them, put them in the future. That there was an idea that was very appealing to me. Ram has always, since the very beginning, has been something that me and Harry have been very passionate about, is the idea of the individual versus the collective. We have the majority of Ram songs deal with that topic, and we're like, before every album, we're like, no songs about that, and we always end up with half the album being songs about that anyway. And it's because we are, it's one thing, a bond that we have, that we're individualists, and we don't believe in the collective as such, because we see what happens when people, what happens with the mass when it's controlled. And it's more or less all of the problems in the world are created by sheep following a rabid wolf. And we just try to urge people to think for themselves, stand up for themselves, and take control of their own lives. That's more or less the mission of the lyrics in the music.
So you guys always speak against tyranny. Is the heavy metal tyranny the only kind of tyranny that you support?
The heavy metal tyranny
means the individual.
Yeah, exactly. It means setting your own rules, and because that's what heavy metal is for us. When we were growing up, everybody was like, do this, do that. No, fuck off. I'm doing this, and I have this music to support me to do whatever I want. And so the heavy metal tyranny is the individual doing exactly what he wants to achieve with his life without any compromises. So that's why we call it the heavy metal tyranny. But it's actually the individual tyrannizing himself within his own life to be as individual as possible.
Like I said in an interview with Jarvis from Night Demon, I arrived pretty late to the new wave of traditional heavy metal party, mainly because I was stuck listening to the same 70s and 80s bands. The first album I listened from Ran was Subversive, and it's still my favorite. How much important was this album for your career? Do you think it created the path for Rod to break into German charts?
Yeah, definitely. We were really scared before doing Rod because of all the massively good reviews that Subversive had got. So that was when it really took off in a way. And we're very proud about that album, how it turned out. And it's my favorite as well. I think it's better than Rod.
Yeah, I think all the songs that got to that album, they together make this album what it is. Because you can have songs on previous or later albums that are as good or better, but this these 10 titles put together made this album, and I think they made it so strong.
This interview is being recorded during an 11 dates tour through Europe, and it's called
The Cruel Winter Tour, and features Ram, Screamer and Satan as headliner. Screamer started 10 years after Run was formed. We can say it's 3 generations of bands on stage.
How do you feel about touring with a legend and a relatively newcomer?
Well, I think it's really cool. I think we did a press release stating that Satan was the innovators and we're the defenders of the metal sound. And then Screamer comes more or less in in the wake of what we did in the early 2000s. And it's cool because we enjoy the old metal sound the most. It's just, of course, because that's the sound that we play. And to be able to hit the road with bands that we listened to when we were teenagers, legends to us. And so there's a feeling of heritage that's really cool. Alright, no, that's what it comes down to every day anyway, just going on stage, doing your best, then traveling and trying to fill the time with beers or whatever. So you don't really think about, it's like going to work. If you work for a company that you really enjoy working for, that does a product that you really like, let's say I'm working for a really cool metal label, whatever, but you still are going to sit there at your desk answering emails, sending away promos to people, or sending albums on pressing. So when you're doing just that, you don't think about that you're working for and that's how tours get. You just get focused on, oh, okay, here's the venue, here's the hotel, all these technical things that you just, how do we have gas in the car, is our fucking GPS working? I mean, it's mainly those things that bother you when you're on tour. It's just a world of its own.
Satan released Cruel Magic last year and it was an awesome album.
Do you see Ren doing the same thing 20 years from now, releasing a great album?
20 years.
20 years.
How old are you then?
Almost
70, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Let's see about that.
Yeah. It's not that fucking fun. 20 years. We'll see.
Hopefully, but
Yeah, but
I wouldn't promise.
Regarding the energy that we're trying to put into our live shows, and considering that people would be 70 or pushing 70, we wouldn't be able to do that. We would die on stage, which would be rather cool, but we'll see about that.
What kind of advice would you give to someone starting a heavy metal band now, a real heavy metal band?
If you're really into heavy metal, I would say keep playing what you like and don't go for trends, and don't listen too much of advice how the music should sound. Other than that, keep practicing, keep writing songs, and focus on your dream, whatever.
Yeah, I would say that focus on the songs, and don't focus on. There's a lot of stories about there's this quick way to success, whatever, do this and this is gonna happen, and if you do this, all these doors will open and blah blah. That's all bullshit. You have to have. You don't have anything if you don't have good songs. So before even bringing the band into the world, make sure that you have written songs that you really, really like and that you think have great potential, because there's no use of doing this starting run for years and years. It's better to be ready when the release comes. And songs are what matters, nothing else. There's no quick fix for success in the metal business. It's just write as good songs as you possibly can. That's the only way to do it, I believe.
And after the tour is finished, what kind of news can we expect from Ram? Since you took 2 years from Subversive to Rod, does it mean we're going to get something new very soon?
Yeah, could be.
Could be.
We can't say too much about it right now, but there's a strong possibility that something's going to be out this year. Yeah.
We're finished, but I have just a quick last question.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of a live album? Do you think it's time already?
Yeah, possibly. Not this year. um, but we've had plans for that. I have ideas for covers and shit in my head for a live album.
I think you have to have the right circumstances for
Yeah,
such production.
yeah. It's not too
Bring,
easy.
bring the equipment or
Yeah,
book a good venue that you know you have the control that night and you can set up all the equipment. And,
everybody has to have a good night.
yeah, as well.
So it's much harder doing a live album than a studio album.
Yeah.
But I mean, Ram is in many ways a band to be experienced live. So an album that would catch the intensity that we can bring would be really cool. Absolutely. But the really good live albums are massive fucking productions. The ones I enjoy. The last one I really enjoyed was Live Insurrection by Halford. It's a really good live album where you really feel the live atmosphere and intensity. Iron Maiden has done a lot of good live albums. So for us it's got to be a kind of a production in that scale, and then we would have to have a really massive fucking show. And if we do, we'll probably record it.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah. Like, you're from Brazil, set us up at Rock in Rio.
Yeah.
That would be nice. So thank you guys for the interview. It was an honor to meet you here,
Thank you.
and
very much.
all the best for Ran in the future.
Yes.
If you have any message to the viewers, you can.
Well, thank you for tuning into New Wave of Traditional Heavy Metal Full Albums, and keep on supporting the New Wave of Traditional Heavy Metal scene so the sound can survive.